Welcome. We are here today to renew our obligation to our church and to our students and to the children and youth of our parishes. Because we are all involved in the work of the church, we are obligated to participate in a safe environment training program. You have already completed the initial training and are required to have continued training throughout your service to our church. It is the policy of the Archeparchy to renew this training every 5 years. The following Safe Environment Renewal course for parish communities and personnel was developed by the Metropolitan Archeparchy of Pittsburgh. It is a supplement to previously promulgated training programs of the Archeparchy. I deemed that this program is in accord with Catholic moral principles and with the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People, particularly Article 12. Accordingly, this program is approved for use in the Metropolia Archeparchy of Pittsburgh, effected and promulgated this 17th day of May, 2018. Signed, Most Reverend William C. Skurla, D.D., Metropolitan Archbishop of Pittsburgh. Prevention. It's all about the children. The training, background clearances, and our collective efforts as a parish community are required of all Catholic communities. These are the requirements of the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People, and have been embraced by the Byzantine Eparchy of Pittsburgh. We will talk more about the Charter later. Some ask whether or not these types of discussions are properly held in a religious environment. In the years since the first charter was established by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, there has been much debate about child abuse education, abuse prevention, and personal safety in a church setting. The debate looks at whether or not education by the church contributes significantly to the safety, well-being, and spiritual growth of our children. The church believes that these messages are consistent with the teachings of Christ. Children need to hear consistent messages, that they are deserving of dignity and respect, that God and the church want them to be safe and involved in loving and proper relationships, that we want to help them if a relationship isn't right. Such messages can help children retain their faith in the face of disappointing or even devastating behavior of an adult. Communicating to children as a church helps to build safe, stable, nurturing relationships with adults, building children's resiliency in the face of adversity. What are some of the specific protections that have taken place after this reflection and prayer? At the national level, and as a part of the Charter, the USCCB created two entities, the Office of Children Youth Protection, or the OCYP, and the National Review Board. The NRB is a group of prominent lay Catholics. These two groups were to share a mandate not only to help investigate and understand the sexual abuse of minors by priests, but also recommend policies that are designated to prevent such abuses in the future and to reconcile with those victims of the abuse. We are all here today because Article 12 of the Charter requires that dioceses or eparchies are to maintain safe environment programs, which the diocese or eparchial bishop deems to be in accordance with the Catholic moral principles. The programs are intended to provide the broadest possible umbrella of protection, which necessarily includes mandated training, criminal and child abuse background checks for priests, deacons, religious, employees, volunteers, well, essentially all who do or may come in contact with children. At the archeparchial level, There is also a review board that assists the Archbishop in his important ministry. What is the review board? Each diocesan eparchial review board functions as a confidential consultative body to the bishop or the eparch. The majority of its members are to be laypersons, not in the employ of the diocese or the eparchy. This board is to advise the diocesan or eparchial bishop in his assessment of allegations of sexual abuse of minors and in his determination of a cleric's suitability for ministry. It is regularly to review diocesan or eparchial policies and procedures for dealing with sexual abuse of minors. Every diocese and eparchy is audited for compliance with the charter and the policies that have been established in it. An outside national firm, Stonebridge Business Partners, goes to dioceses and eparchies and makes sure the charter, including policies on training, background clearances, and victim outreach, is followed. The Office of Child and Youth Protection is overseen in its endeavors to make certain that the charter is faithfully followed by the entire Catholic Church in every diocese and each eparchy. The Archeparchy of Pittsburgh has consistently been in compliance since the first audit in 2003, but we always act upon recommendations on how to do things better. One recent recommendation was to create this training refresher course. Article 12 of the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People challenges each diocese or eparchy to be a part of the larger church to maintain safe environment programs. These programs are left to each diocesan or eparchial bishop to create and operate. Each bishop knows what is best for his flock. The programs are intended to provide the broadest possible umbrella of protection, which necessarily includes accepting our code of conduct, maintaining training, and criminal and child abuse background checks. And to whom does this apply? All priests, deacons, religious, employees, or volunteers, essentially all who do or may come in contact with children. It is the archeparchal policy of a 5-year renewal for all. This includes all of the clearances as well as this very training. Let's talk about each of these safe environment requirements. The first one is acceptance of the Archeparchial Code of Conduct. This is established in Article 6 of the Charter. Dioceses or eparchies are to make clear to clergy and all members of the community the standards of conduct for clergy and other persons in position of trust with regard to children. The Byzantine Metropolitan Archeparchy of Pittsburgh has an established code of conduct that all that are subject to safe environment policies are mandated to accept. Copies of the code of conduct are available on our website. Even if you have accepted this pledge before, we welcome you recommitting to this important principle. The next requirement for all under the Charter is for criminal and child abuse clearances to be conducted. Our eparchy spans from Pennsylvania to Texas, and we need to consider many states' laws and practices to obtain the proper clearances. Methods to obtain child abuse and criminal background clearances differ from state to state. For those outside of Pennsylvania, the laws of your state permit us to use an outside vendor to obtain your criminal and child abuse clearances. This is a simplified process where you provide a signed authorization form from our website that permits the Archeparchial Safe Environment Coordinator to obtain the information through a third-party vendor, First Advantage. You sign the release forms and we take care of it from there. All safe environment forms are available on the Archeparchy's website, www.archpit.org/safe-environment-program. By statute, Pennsylvania residents have to follow a more time-consuming option. The criminal and child abuse clearances are separate. Pennsylvania residents must submit the following 2 documents, one for the criminal clearance and one for the child abuse clearance. For the criminal background check, there is a form on our website. It is called the Criminal Background Disclosure and Authorization Form. You will need to fill in all the required information, sign it, and return it to the Chancery office. We'll take care of it from there. For your PA child abuse certification, the entire process is laid out on the website. Your ECF coordinator is familiar with this process and can help you. You can also contact the Chancery, area code 412-231-4000, and when prompted, extension 10, or email Chet Dzinski, coordinator of Safe Environment, at c.dudzinski, DUDZINSKI, at archpit.org for an authorization code and instructions for how to log on to the PA Child Welfare Portal. The most important step is to get the authorization code. It is specific to you and will permit you to obtain a free report. Then, using a computer connected to the internet, log on to the PA Child Welfare Portal. It is the Compass portal highlighted in red on our slide. You will then fill out the child abuse clearance application. It may take some time to fill out all of the required information, so make sure you give yourself enough of a window. If you don't have access to a computer, separate arrangements can be made. There are alternate forms to fill out. The paper process may delay the results by a few weeks. We are a mobile society. If you have been a resident of another state or another country in the last 10 years, the FBI clearances are necessary. Pennsylvania has engaged a vendor, Identigo, to perform these federal clearances. They perform background checks around the country. You must register online to obtain a fingerprint appointment and ultimately provide authorization for this information to be shared with the Archeparchy. The website as well as the service codes are provided on this slide. Many medical professionals, teachers, and others go through yearly clearances. Also, another diocese or eparchy may have recently cleared you. This may make all of our jobs a bit easier. We at the Safe Environment Office may be able to accept these clearances. Clearances are assessed on a case-by-case basis by the Safe Environment Office, but generally, these previously obtained clearances are acceptable. You or we can request your file materials from your employer, or we can probably get your clearance file from your previous diocese or eparchy. We have talked about the process of becoming retrained and into compliance with the charter and Archeparchy policies, but we can't lose sight of the love of the church and what it teaches us about the role each of us can play to make sure all of our children are safe and make sure that they all feel loved. As Pope Francis said, the church loves all of her children like a loving mother, but cares for all and protects with a special affection to those who are the smallest and defenseless. This is the duty that Christ himself entrusted to the entire Christian community as a whole. Aware of this, the Church is especially vigilant in protecting children and vulnerable adults. The Secretariat of the National Review Board has summarized some essential points to remember about why we are here. They are categorized as the 10 truths about child abuse, its prevention and healing, and will be covered over the next 2 slides. Number 1, sexual molestation is about the victim. The abuser, the family of the abused, and the parish community are all affected by this sin and crime, but the primary person of concern must be the victim. Number 2, no one has the right to have access to children. If people wish to volunteer for the church, for example, in the parish school, they must follow diocesan guidelines on background checks, safe environment training, policies and procedures, as well as code of conduct. No one, no matter who they are, has an automatic right to be around children or young people who are in the care of the church without the proper screening and without following the rules. Number 3, common sense is not all that common. It is naive to presume that people automatically know boundaries, so organizations and families have to spell them out. For example, no youth minister, cleric, or other adult leader should be in a child's bedroom or otherwise alone with the child. Number 4, child sexual abuse can be prevented. Awareness that child sexual abuse exists and can exist anywhere is a start. It is then critical to build safety barriers around children and young people to keep them from harm. These barriers come in the form of protective guardians, codes of conduct, background evaluations, policies and procedures, as well as safety training programs. Number 5, the residual effects of having been abused can last a lifetime. Those who have been abused seldom just get over it. The sense of violation goes deep into a person's psyche, and feelings of anger, shame, hurt, and betrayal can build long after the abuse has taken place. Some have even described the feeling as if it has scarred their soul. Number 6, feeling heard leads towards healing. Relief from hurt and anger often comes when one feels heard, when one's pain and concerns are taken seriously, and a victim or survivor's appropriate sense of rage and indignation is acknowledged. Not being acknowledged contributes to a victim's sense of being invisible, unimportant, and unworthy. They are in some way re-victimized. 7, you cannot always predict who will be an abuser. Experience shows that most abuse is at the hands of someone who has gained the trust of a victim or survivor and/or his or her family. Most abuse occurs in the family setting. Sometimes the nicest person in the world is an abuser. And this niceness enables a false sense of trust to be created between the abuser and the abused. Number 8, there are behavioral warning signs of child abusers. Training and education help adults recognize grooming techniques that are precursors to abuse. Some abusers isolate a potential victim by giving him or her undue attention or lavish gifts. Another common grooming technique is to allow young people to participate in activities which their parents or guardians would not approve, such as watching pornography, drinking alcohol, using drugs, and excessive touching, which includes wrestling and tickling. It is also critical to be wary of age-inappropriate relationships, seen, for example, in the adult who is more comfortable with children than fellow adults. Parishes can set up rules to guide interaction between adults and children. Number 9, people can be taught to identify grooming behavior. Abusers try to project the image that they are kind, generous, caring people, while their intent is to lure a minor into an inappropriate relationship. An abuser may develop a relationship with the family to increase his or her credibility. Abusers might show attention to the child by talking to him or her, being friendly, sharing alcohol with the minor, and giving the child status by insinuating that the child is their favorite or special person. Offenders can be patient and may groom their victims or their families or their communities for many years. Number 10, background checks do work. Background checks in churches, schools, and other organizations keep predators away from the children, both because they scare off some predators and because they uncover past actions which should ban an adult from working or volunteering with children. If an adult has difficulty with some boundaries that society sets, such as not driving while intoxicated or not disturbing the public peace, he or she may have difficulties with other boundaries, such as not hurting a child. Never forget that offenders lie. We are all members of this church community and a larger society. Child abuse prevention organizations have performed extensive studies, and these are some of the sobering facts to keep in mind. Research estimates 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn the age of 18. The abuse of minors can lead to serious psychological problems. According to one study, 80% of 21-year-olds who reported childhood abuse met the criteria for at least one psychological condition. And finally, a report of child abuse is made every 10 seconds in the United States, according to the Child Help Organization. There is still much we can learn about child abuse detection and what we can do about it. Let's continue to the next slide. Child abuse, according to the Child Protective Services law, means intentionally, knowing, or recklessly doing any of the following through causing bodily injury to a child, fabricating, feigning, or intentionally exaggerating or inducing a medical symptom or disease which results in a potentially harmful medical evaluation or treatment of a child, causing or substantially contributing to serious mental injury of a child, causing sexual abuse or exploitation of a child, creating a reasonable likelihood of bodily injury to a child, creating a likelihood of sexual abuse or exploitation of a child, causing serious physical neglect of a child, or causing the death of a child. There are 4 nationally recognized categories of child abuse: physical, sexual, mental, or neglect. Child abuse can be violent or non-violent. It may involve touching or non-touching behaviors. Child abuse also includes certain acts in which the act itself constitutes abuse without any resulting injury or condition. Acts can include any of the following: kicking, biting, throwing, burning, stabbing, or cutting a child in a manner that endangers the child. Unreasonably restraining or confining a child based on consideration of the method, location, or the duration of the restraint or confinement. Forcibly shaking a child under the age of 1. Forcibly slapping or otherwise striking a child under the age of 1 year. Interfering with the breathing of a child. Causing a child to be present during the operation of a methamphetamine laboratory, provided that the violation is being investigated by law enforcement. Leaving a child unsupervised with an individual other than the child's parent, who the parent knows or reasonably should have known was required to register as a sexual offender, or has been determined to be a sexually violent predator or a sexually violent delinquent. Child abuse occurs in all walks of life. What are some things we can do about it? As a church, we have the opportunity to be the face of God in a relationship that models the gospel message of Christ, communicating to children as a church that helps to build safe, stable, nurturing relationships with adults, building children's resiliency in the face of adversity. We need to continually educate ourselves about child abuse, child abusers, and potential child abusers. For instance, let's discuss a possible scenario. What if you get the creeps from one of your volunteers at your church? You notice someone always has his or her hands on the kids in one way or another. What should you do? Listen to your gut. Offenders give warning signs that knowledgeable adults can use. Your gut often picks them up. Report this behavior. You are not accusing someone of abuse. You are communicating your concern about inappropriate behavior. Let the diocese or eparchial victims assistance or safe environment coordinator know your concerns. Let the supervisor of the program know of them as well. Keep reporting your concerns until someone hears you. Your courage to report those type of incidences may be very helpful. Reporting can let the person know their behavior is unacceptable, and it lets them know they are being watched. If it's poor judgment, this gives the person the opportunity to change their behavior. What are some other key tactics of perpetrators you need to know? First, the code of silence. An abuser will tell his or her victims, stay silent. Secrets of abuse are maintained to protect the relationship. Secondly, grooming usually takes about 2 to 8 weeks to win a child and or their family's trust. So how does this grooming process begin, and what should we look for? Groomers usually prefer the company of children over adults. Groomers give approval to a child to do things you as a parent or supervisor would not approve. Groomers sympathize with the child's rebellion against the rules or actions by their parents or supervisors. Groomers give gifts and single the child out as special. Groomers may engage in an inordinate amount of hugs and touching. Groomers often pay special attention to the interests of a child. Groomers do all of this to spend more time alone with the child. On this slide, you will see some possible signs that a child is being abused. Things such as bruisings, swellings, and marks, which are hard to explain. A child with lingering sadness and anxiety. Changes in a child's behavior or attitude around someone who formerly was considered a friend. Sleep problems or nightmares. Withdrawal or self-isolation. Poor hygiene or untreated illness or injury often can signal neglect. Often there are barriers to keep children from disclosing abuse. The child victim likely has been held to secrecy by the perpetrator. Children may fear the consequence of reporting, fearful they will be in trouble or that the perpetrator, whom they may greatly care for, may be in trouble, that their family will be devastated and that they will not be believed and that they will be rejected. Silence or failure to communicate about abuse gives the message that abuse is something that is not to be spoken about. One achievement attained in communicating to children as the church is breaking that silence. Children need to hear from our church that we want them to report abuse, even if the perpetrator is one of our own. They need to hear that we, as a church, want them to be respected and protected, and that we will take actions to keep them safe. If we can support children in reporting warning signs or indicators that a relationship isn't right, we have the opportunity to monitor, problem solve, and address concerns before an abusive relationship progresses to the point of physical harm or significant emotional injury. What do you need to know about your obligation to report suspected abuse? The state of Pennsylvania defines mandated reporters as those who are required by law to report suspected child abuse. Permissive reporters are strongly encouraged to report suspected child abuse. In the Eparchy of Pittsburgh, all clergy, deacons, priests, sisters, employees, and volunteers are mandated reporters. But what should we look for? Should we immediately assume the worst? Do we take a chance? Should we talk about it with our pastor first? Sometimes we must make informed decisions based on our knowledge of our parishes, our parishioners, and our children. If a child shows signs of possible abuse or an adult's actions are suspect, we should immediately communicate our concerns to a person who has authority in this situation. If circumstances warrant, church and civil authorities should be notified. Remember, all church personnel are mandated reporters. We are mandated to report suspected abuse. No child should have to endure such suffering. Here are some frequently asked questions related to reporting. When must a mandated reporter make a report? If you have taken the PA online course, Recognizing and Reporting Child Abuse, you will have learned that mandated reporters are required to report immediately by calling the Child Abuse Hotline when they suspect child abuse. Must I report suspected abuse if I learn of the abuse from someone other than the child who was allegedly abused? Yes. Nothing requires the mandated reporter have direct contact with the child in order to make a report. The number for the Pennsylvania Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline is 1-800-932-0313. Child abuse can also be reported electronically at the Child Welfare Portal, www.compass.state.pa.us/CWIS. After making the report to Childline, you are required to immediately notify the person in charge of your institution, your school, facility, or agency, or the designated agent of the person in charge. For our parishes, that may mean notifying the pastor, notifying the bishop, or notifying Chet Dzinski, who is our coordinator for Safe Environment Training. Am I protected from civil and criminal liability if I make a report of suspected child abuse? Yes. Persons making a report of suspected child abuse are immune from civil and criminal liability as long as the report was made in good faith. If I make a report, is my identity protected? The identity of the person making the report is kept confidential, with the exception of being released to law enforcement officials or to the district attorney's office. Additional information can be obtained from the Pennsylvania website keepkidssafe.pa.gov. This website is designed to serve as the hub for information related to critical components impacting child protection, including a link for mandated reporters to make reports of suspected child abuse. Also, this website would include training on child abuse recognition and reporting, and additional information related to clearances and general information related to child protection laws. In other states, please refer to your state's online website. In Ohio, jfs.ohio.gov, and in West Virginia, dhhr.wv.gov. For the state of Ohio, the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. For the state of Texas, the Department of Family and Protective Services. For West Virginia, the Department of Health and Human Resources. Or for Louisiana, the 1-855 for LA Kids. All states' phone lines are toll-free, operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. These are the contacts for each of the states in our eparchy to report suspected child abuse or neglect. Each state also has excellent resource information on their respective websites. If you have been the victim of sexual abuse by a priest, deacon, or individual representing the Catholic Church in a diocese or eparchy in the United States, there are several things you can do. 1. You may contact the appropriate law enforcement agency to determine if the incident falls within the statute of limitations in the jurisdiction in which the offense occurred. 2. You may contact local child protection agencies, a private attorney, or a support group. 3. It is particularly important for help healing and response from the diocese or eparchy that you contact the appropriate Victims Assistance Coordinator. In our eparchy, our new Victims Assistance Coordinator is Courtney Minard. She can be reached at area code 724-504-9588. The Victims Assistance Coordinator is available to assist you in making a formal complaint of abuse to the diocese or eparchy, in arranging a personal meeting with the bishop or his representative, and for obtaining support for your specific needs. What are some tips for online safety for our children? Learn the age restrictions for social media and various websites. They were created for your child's safety and should be followed. Chat with your kids. Develop an open dialogue so that you can talk with your children about the benefits and dangers of the internet. Cultivate an interest in their online activities. What are their favorite websites? Have you participated in their online gaming? What are their online interests? And don't be afraid to ask your children who they are talking to online and what they are talking about. Approximately 59% of children have used a social network by the time they are 10. Facebook has the most users under the age of 13. Kids under 13 are flocking also to Instagram to post and share photos. As a society, we have largely given up, giving age restrictions a collective shrug and a so what. This just cannot be our response. Predators use social media extensively. It is easy and effective for them. You and your child need to know that communicating with someone not known to a child in real life, sharing personal information, and or putting an image of a child on any site could put them at risk for victimization. Here are potential hazards to consider. People are anonymous and can pretend to be anyone else. There is no way of knowing that people you meet and are communicating with are who they say they are. Potential offenders are often versed in age-appropriate topics for children. They are often convincing and make a child believe they understand the child like no one else. Once a child has a comfort level with an individual, he or she may likely divulge personal information. Online relationships have a tendency to escalate quickly. Children can turn to establishing online relationships and neglect the real-life relationships they may have with family or friends. A child can become addicted or dependent on chatting online. Any or all of these online facts need to be understood to be avoided. In closing, let us consider this Bible verse and what it is telling us. Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say rejoice. Let all men know your forbearance. The Lord is at hand. Have no anxiety about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will keep your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace will be with you. I can do all things in him who strengthens me. Thank you. Please complete the self-verification of the Safe Environment Refresher course. Please click on the link for the Self-Verification of Safe Environment Refresher course training form. Print the form, complete and sign the form. Give the completed and signed form to your ECF coordinator or pastor. Complete your child abuse and background clearances, and if applicable, your fingerprinting. Remember, these need updated every 5 years. All forms should be mailed to Chet Dazinski, the Safe Environmental Coordinator for the Archeparchy of Pittsburgh. His address appears on this slide. We would like to thank you all for participating in this refresher course, and may God bless you as you continue your ministry in providing a safe environment for the youth of our eparchy.